Good morning again, and welcome to another edition of MasterMind Minutes. My name is Gary Occhiogrosso. I'm the managing partner for Franchise Growth Solutions and the publisher of FranchiseMoneymaker.com. For those of you new to MasterMind Minutes, it's a very simple concept. We have one guest. We typically have one topic or one question, and we have one expert answer around that topic. We do this in minutes, not hours, so you don't need to invest a lot of time getting some insights. And while we all always realize that, that's a bit of a tease, as I say, you will have contact information for our guest, which we'll give to you at the end of the program. So if anything that the guest is talking about and you want to know more about or contact the company, not only will we mention it, but as you know, underneath the podcast platform, you will have links to websites and email addresses and things like that. And today, my guest is Peter Stern. He's the managing director of Mr. Jeff here in the U.S. That is a company that I find incredibly interesting because for those of you who listen to the podcast and know me, I'm typically involved in the restaurant business. So things that aren't restaurant oriented, I always find intriguing. Peter has more than 20 years of experience in the multi-faceted laundromat industry. His expertise includes store operations, finance, business development, and innovation. Now, prior to joining Mr. Jeff, he was the senior vice president of Laundry Capital, managing director of Clean Ventures, and was an owner-operator for many years of the Great American Laundromat, one of the highest grossing laundromats in the New York City metro area where we are. He led product and business development before that for a video auditing and AI company called Arrowsight, where he worked with companies such as McDonald's, utilizing video to analyze key operational performance metrics, providing immediate feedback to frontline and executive management, which I love because you can catch employees doing things right or not so right, and you can teach and guide and counsel. So Jeff, I'm sorry, I'm calling you Jeff here because I'm seeing Mr. Jeff. My apologies, Peter. Thank you for being with us here today. Before we get into the question, why don't you maybe fill in the blanks because that's a quick bio and tell us a little bit more about what you're doing and Mr. Jeff in general, and then we'll get into the question.
Yeah, sure. So, I always say I didn't grow up as a little boy dreaming of getting into the laundromat industry. Actually wanted to be a baseball player, but that didn't work out like most young boys' dreams. But I have a finance background, so I worked consulting for PricewaterhouseCoopers in their financial advisory services, and just the way life goes, kind of through a gentleman that I interned with, introduced me to the founder of Laundry Capital, and we met and had no idea why I was meeting him or what I was going to do in the laundromat industry. Knew very little bit about it, but it's it set me on this path, and it's 20 years, and it's a really interesting and fascinating journey. And I say to everyone, like, after 20 years, it's really interesting that this is the most excited I've ever been about the industry. So it's incredibly exciting time, and I'm happy to share my thoughts and experience with you about Mr. Jeff and the industry as a whole.
Great. And I, we have our one question, but I do have some other things that I need to have unraveled in my mind about laundromats. And it's interesting to me because years ago, I worked with a gentleman who ran laundromats and dry cleaners. And I have to tell you, I mean, the guy was a multi-millionaire when, by the way, when being a millionaire really meant something today, I guess you got to be a billionaire in order for it to really matter. And he used to tell me a lot about the industry, and just in terms of where you situate these things and the difference between a laundromat and a dry cleaner, which I think most people know. But, it's interesting to me because my impression, and maybe it's the impression of a lot of people, so you'll have to push back on me here because I'm sure these things constantly change and they constantly evolve, which is, part of what our question is about today. But, laundromats to me are always situated in areas where maybe they're not, single or multifamily houses where people might have washer dryers, so to speak. And today I actually see them I do see them in those types of neighborhoods, which tells me that, as an industry, it's evolving. Maybe people view it differently. Certainly, I'm sure the industry has adapted to new technologies and innovations. And Mr. Jeff is a franchise, so I think that's important to add here. What do leaders of the industry, people like yourself, need to do in terms of evolving the technologies and the innovations that would attract entrepreneurs to the laundromat business? Because as you said in the beginning, you didn't grow up thinking you wanted to do this. And I don't know that people think of it as a glamorous type business or even something that they even think about. It's like just one of those things that it kind of exists and people don't think about it. So how do you as a leader really attract people to this space? Because I know firsthand it's lucrative.
Yeah, so I think that your story resonates with me because just about everybody I come in contact with, whether it's a cocktail party or a wedding, and you say, what do you do? And you're in the laundromat industry, everyone has an uncle or a friend or a cousin or somebody they knew that was in the business, and they heard, all these great things about the profitability and the returns of the business. And it was always alluring from that standpoint, yet very difficult business for people to actually get into and invest in historically.
Why is that? Why is that? It seems like you get a storefront, you put a couple of washing machines in and you're ready to go.
Yeah, so and a lot of the people that were interested were professional types they built up a nest egg and looking to deploy some capital. Traditionally, it was a extremely capital intensive business and very hard to scale. And that largely attributed to the lack of technology and innovation. So most industries where you look at the restaurant industry or you go back, and look at all the industries that have, in the retail world that have virtually rolled up and consolidated on a national level, they all have a similarity of they have economies of scale. So technology came in and you could build more and more units, a brand, and there was a benefit to having a larger scale chain operation, systems and controls. And that didn't exist in the industry. And as a result, I've always said our industry experienced de-economies of scale. So very difficult. As a matter of fact, my former company is one of the few large chains in the industry. And when you layer in overhead and G&A, we always found that the business did better in the hands of the owner operator. So, that kind of brings me to where I am today with Jeff. I've always believed in that premise. It's an owner operator business. And I love the idea of this being a franchise business because now you can leverage a technology company like Jeff and all the great things that they can deliver in terms of a platform to franchisees, but then you have the hands-on TLC of a franchisee that's operating the business and taking care of the customer because clothes are personal. If you take your wife's favorite pair of jeans and shrink them, there's no monetary value that's going to replace that. A lot of people focus on the average ticket in retail. So let's say the average ticket in this business is $40, $50. I always say that's not where it stops because if you're delivering a bag of 50 pounds of clothes, what's the value in that clothes? I mean, depending on what type of clothes you wear, it could be upwards of $1,000, and it's very sentimental to people. So putting it in the hands of people that they trust and care and quality is important. But I think that it's time with the change, the rapid rate of change in society, that the laundromat industry catches up with the rest of the world. So I think you combine the best of both worlds between technology and the owner operator, and you have a good system for growth.
Okay, so, and that's very interesting how you describe it. So I said earlier on, I need you to help me kind of untangle my point of view here. So we're not, and maybe we are, so we're not necessarily talking about kind of the self-service, coin operated, you go in there, you get your soap and you do it yourself. You're talking about more of a customer oriented service type of laundromat where I'm dropping my clothing off, you're handling it for me, and I'm coming back to pick it up. Tell me, what is the format there?
Yeah, so I'll break this down a little bit. It's interesting. When I first entered the business I was in was almost exclusively self-service. So laundromats existed. The over-the-counter wash and fold type services were very limited back then. What I've seen over the years, and it has accelerated the last 5 years, and then the pandemic pretty much put it on steroids, is this massive shift towards wash and fold services. So the younger generation, I think, has a different value set, where I think the older generation, it was more about getting that big house and 2 cars and a big yard. And I think that the younger generation is setting up their lives very different. What they value is very different. And I think what they value is time and convenience.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So what you're seeing is the shift. What I've seen in the self-service business is an aging customer base. And, what I saw, one of the reasons why I made the switch over to Mr. Jeff is, I think that the self-service industry is being fooled by their own success. So you're not seeing a rapid or any decline in sales in that business. But what I've noticed is that over the past 20 years, the average age of the customer is just increasing. So I think that the writing's on the wall for a massive disruption in this industry. And I think it is towards the service. You're seeing a huge explosion in growth of wash and fold services. And I think that it goes beyond even the existing market today. I think that similar to what Uber did for transportation, they grew that market. So people that weren't typically using cabs now are more accustomed to using an Uber. Yeah. I think the same will happen in laundry. I think that even in suburban America, I know, as a father of 2 young boys, very active, my weekends were typically much busier than my work week. So finding time to do laundry is literally a chore. And I think if there's a reliable quality solution that people can trust, I think that there's a huge demand for it. Mm-hmm. So I draw the analogy. I know that you lived out in the suburbs of New York. I grew up out there, and when I grew up in the 80s, most people cut their own lawn and did their own landscaping. It wasn't unusual to see that. Now you see virtually nobody doing that. Mm-hmm. And I think that same trend is going to occur in the laundromat industry.
And I, there's 2 or 3 points there I want to highlight, because I think you're spot on all of them. First of all, yeah, you're right. I don't cut my own lawn anymore. And I don't see people doing that. And in where I live, as younger people are moving in, and when I say younger, the Gen Zs and the millennials are not all that young anymore. They're in their mid-30s, right, approaching 40. Those generations, and I can tell you, I've learned a lot from. I have a millennial daughter, and I've learned a lot that you can really get a better sense of life if you focus on experiences rather than things. But to focus on experiences, you have to have time. And in things like laundry, I mean, if you look at young folks who are willing to pay I don't know, $10 to the DoorDash guy to have a cheeseburger delivered. That's not about saving the $10. That's about time. I don't want to cook. I want that time to be used for something else. And maybe things like cutting lawns and doing laundry all kind of fall into that same bucket. So as a country, as a people, so to speak, there's been this huge shift in mindset as to what's really important in people's lives. And I really think it's time and experience these days with younger folks. So there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that a service type business like yours has nothing but upside. It's just the way it is. It also further kind of straightens out my notion of something I said earlier, where to me, and again, it's just me, my envision of this was not what you described, Mr. Jeff, is, and we're going to ask you about some points of differentiation in just a minute. But my envision of this was the coin op self-service, which I kind of put into the, that goes into apartments, and maybe it even goes into, I dare say, lower economic type areas where people don't have the space or the homes or what have you. But what you're talking about really speaks to, I don't want to say affluent, but it certainly speaks to middle class, upper middle class, more disposable income. Because if I don't have the money to pay someone to do my laundry, then I'm forced to either do it on my own at home or do it at a coin op. So again, my mentality is now really being shifted here, that you're talking about a mainstream service that handles kind of, let's call it middle class America, skewing a little younger, where people want time so they can have their own experiences and they don't want to, quote, waste time doing laundry. Am I kind of describing that?
Yeah, you're definitely hitting on the sweet spots of where Jeff is targeting. But I'll tell you something that has been fascinating to me. The company I work for, Laundry Capital, which owns clean rights centers and laundromats, and is a more traditional self-service laundromat company in the lower socioeconomic income levels that you would typically expect laundromats to exist. And we've even seen there the growth of wash and fold in those neighborhoods has been exponential. And we actually launched pilot stores with Ms. Jeff inside those clean rights stores in Jamaica, Queens, and Canarsie, Brooklyn. And it's amazing the traction. I think in the first 3 or 4 weeks that we opened our first store in Jamaica, Queens, we had over 3,000 app downloads.
Yeah, well, I think that underscores the importance of people wanting more time to be with their families and what have you. That affordability, assuming it's affordable, and I assume it is, like affordability. I don't want to say becomes second tier, but it does to a certain extent. Where, hey, I'm willing to pay this money because I want to spend Saturday afternoon with my kid at the soccer field. I don't want to miss that.
I think you touched upon it earlier. We've flipped this world upside down. So, or not we, your daughter's generation has, and just our value system is much different. Especially like you take the gig economy now, and somebody can go out there rather than schlepping to the laundromat, spending 3 hours doing laundry. They could be earning. And, so it's time with family and friends, it's time earning. So they're dissecting their days much differently. And I think I find myself in the same position as you, is I'm learning a lot from it, because I think time is the most valuable commodity we have on this earth.
Yeah, so I agree. And I do want to ask you about points of differentiation. But first of all, I just want to point out for those listening who are not in the New York area, schlepping is a New York term of Yiddish origin, meaning kind of like you take your clothes to the laundromat. Okay, I just want to point that out. Let me ask you, Mr. Jeff, as a franchise, if I called you and I said, hey, I'm interested in this, what are you going to tell me with respect to points of differentiation? why Mr. Jeff? Why now? Why me? Just give me a little bit of the, I guess, the benefits, if not the features, but certainly the benefits of owning a Mr. Jeff.
Yeah, so I think we're taking all the big trends in the laundromat industry and taking away the capital intensive nature that used to exist. So we're democratizing entrepreneurship, where you can get into this industry at a much lower price point, because a typical self-service laundromat, like 5,000 square feet, is ranging between $1.2 million to $1.5 million to build.
Wow.
So we're taking more of the sweet spot of the service where the growth is, and you can start out with just a few machines. It's you could do as small as a 500 square foot location. You're building a counter, and then we're taking an existing business that is already very strong and very good to begin with in terms of laundry. Like, as you mentioned, a lot of people in it, they've been successful, but it hasn't had these elements of technology that can really boost it and capitalize on the trends. So, we have a driver's app, which does all logistics for pickup and delivery, a business management platform of Jeff Suite. We have a marketing platform with a chatbot that can help you work through all your digital marketing campaigns. And then we have a Jeff Academy that will literally teach you everything about laundry and business and access online anytime you need. So these are all the elements of the platform that you need to be successful. Then data. We have sold 2,000 franchises across 30 countries so far, and accumulating data every day of laundry customer behavior and frequencies, and how they effective marketing campaigns. And then as a franchisee, you get the benefit of all this aggregated data fed back to you to help you be more successful. And then the last component is brand. Where brand really didn't matter in the self-service industry, because it was a business of convenience and location, and the customers came in and did the work themselves. Brand really matters in the service end of this business. Like I mentioned before, you're dropping off really valuable, personal, intimate things to you. You need to know that they're being taken care of and being represented by a good quality brand. So, Jeff is going to do that in the United States, and I think just change the way people think about laundry.
Yeah, and that makes perfectly good sense to me. I will say that it's interesting because it gets back to the initial question regarding technology, and as your market moves to a younger demo, having things like apps and setting this stuff up online and using your device, your phone, make absolutely perfectly good sense to me. So just, is there any one last thing you'd like to leave us with, and then we'll get your contact information?
Yeah, I just think that, I guess the one last thing I'd like to leave you with is that there's always been, it's coming into the business 20 years ago, we'd go to trade shows or real estate shows, and we were like pariah. There was a lot of stigmas about the laundry industry in general, and nobody wanted to talk to us. I think that people should give this industry a fresh look and a new chance. There's a lot of change that has occurred and is occurring at a rapid rate. And I think the laundry business you think of 20 years ago is largely different. And I think Jeff is exponentially different from that, and looking to take this to new heights. So
very cool.
Mind about the industry.
Very, 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 very cool. We are talking with Peter Stern, the managing director of Mr. Jeff here in the US. And Peter, if people want to reach you or reach out to Mr. Jeff and learn more about the franchise, or if they have a question, how and what's the best way to reach you?
Yeah, you can reach me via email at peter.stern@mrjeffapp.com. You can visit the website. There's all sorts of information on the company, franchise opportunities, or if you're looking for services coming to your area, you can get notifications of when that's coming as well.
Great, great. And as I mentioned earlier, we will post your contact information on the platform. As I mentioned, we've been talking with Peter Stern, the managing director of Mr. Jeff. You've been listening to Mastermind Minutes here on Social Geek Radio, and I guarantee this is the only podcast where someone will actually give you the definition and explain what schlep means. So hopefully we'll see you again soon. Jeff, be well, and then thank you for your time today.
All right, thank you.